MPs can do what the hell they like. This government has a big parliamentary majority, but 7 months in, how well's it going? They are doing very, very badly indeed, and they're scared out of their lives. They've got 100 Labour MPs that are representing rural or semi-rural constituencies. And from what I can see, Joe Public is getting behind the concept that the family farm should not be driven out of existence. So politically, I think we can win this. And what's really exciting is other groups are getting on board too. Because this IHT, it isn't just the farms that it hits, it's family businesses as well. In fact, inheritance tax, when you think about it, it's on money that we paid tax on already. The whole thing's monstrous. So I think the country now is going to come together with lots of different groups, and let's just stand up and say no to death taxes, full stop. End death taxes. They're wrong, they're immoral at every level. And the way your community is being treated is unbelievable. I think somebody in the Treasury got their sums wrong when they set the financial limits, or could it be they just want lots of land because they're planning for another 5 million people to come into the country in the next few years. They want to cover tens of thousands of grade 1 agricultural land in places like Lincolnshire with solar panels. Could it be there is an even deeper, more sinister agenda behind what they're doing? Either way, what they're doing is wrong. And I think the one thing the people of this country have is a strong affinity and a strong feeling for the countryside. And that countryside is as beautiful as it is because of families, be it small farms or bigger estates, that have managed this land for centuries and left it as it is. So let's get the whole country behind this campaign, apart, of course, from the political class in Westminster, who now have no connection or no understanding of what our rural communities are, what they represent. Maybe you're not diverse enough. Maybe that's what it is. Although I think, as we can see, and Alan mentioned it, DEI is dying in America, and very soon it's going to die here too. And we'll start judging people on who they are, not what they are. And wouldn't that be a huge improvement? So I promise that I will go on with my colleagues backing your campaigns here and around the country. I also promise that if we have anything to do with it after the next general election, and you never know, the polls are looking quite good at the moment. If we have anything to do with it after the next election, if this has been done to your community, I promise you we will reverse it. And I make that as a promise to you. So look, let's keep fighting. Let's keep the pressure up here and right around the country. And by the way, you've all been behaving impeccably. I know some think more radical action is planned for, but remember, we're not French. All right? They might set fire to things. That might be their culture. It's not our culture. And I would urge all of you, despite how much you've got on the line, despite how distressing this is, and I know in Clacton itself, I've met farming families in tears because they so desperately want to hand this on to the next generations. But please, keep doing it the way you're doing it. Voluble, but peaceful, within the law. And I tell you what, if we do that, we'll get the whole country on side. I wish you all the very best of luck. I promise you, I am right behind you. To London we go!
See you this morning, Nigel. What's the atmosphere like there?
Good morning. Defiant. I mean, it's jolly cold, but that's not going to stop farmers. No, they're defiant. I mean, they feel, and some of these families have had farms for hundreds of years, they feel directly threatened by these proposed tax changes, and they're going to stand up and they're going to fight. And they're doing it here. We're in North London this morning. But this is beginning to happen all over the country, and I sense that we've got a great feeling in our country for the countryside. It's only like it is because it's been looked after and husbanded for centuries by people like this. So I think the public are getting on their side, and for Labour it poses a real headache because they've got about 100 members of Parliament representing rural constituencies, in many cases for the first time, and I think if this farming campaign keeps up with its level of persistence, stays peaceful, which is very, very important, I think they can win some big concessions from the government.
Used the term, Nigel, voluble but peaceful. I noticed that when we challenge the government on what's going on here, they always make this a have and have not issue. It always becomes like, yeah, but these properties are worth £1 million. Well, so is a bungalow in London worth £1 million. And it's made out to be they are getting off with having all this wealth, and you, general public, you don't have this. So we're trying to make it fair. Is this fair?
Well, that's the argument they've been putting to try and get the public on side. But I think the reality is getting through that whilst farms, with their buildings and land, may have a relatively high asset value, their incomes are pretty pitiful. In fact, many farming families living on pretty much minimum wage or less. These are not rich people. These are hard-working people. In previous years, they've had better times, but right now, life is tough. Food prices are low, the supermarkets have squeezed them. These are not wealthy people at all. And if they were to sell their lands and their properties, well, they'd get some money, but their whole way of life would be gone. This is about more than just where they live. This is about a complete culture, a way of life, and somehow the Treasury and the government seem to have lost any sense or connection with where food comes from and with the English countryside. And I have to say, Westminster is just so out of touch.
Be somewhere something that they've got to tweak, though, when you think about it, about land being sold off for tax advantages for people who are buying into farmland, for tax concessions. Is there anything that you can see that needs to be tweaked?
Well, you're right, Eamon. I mean, some big billionaires have bought up vast tracts of Lincolnshire, pushing land prices up to £25,000 an acre because there has been an inheritance tax loophole. I mean, frankly, whatever level you're at, I think inheritance tax, or more accurately, death taxes, should be abolished outright. If they were, we would not have had this distortion to land values that we've seen over the course of the last few years. So no, I would get rid of inheritance tax because the new proposals don't just affect farmers, they affect family businesses as well, and it's just yet another reason why people are selling up and leaving the country. I would say let's just end death taxes, and then some of these distortions won't occur.
Nigel, I thought one of the stand-up moments from your speech this morning was applauding the farmers' behaviour, saying that their protests have been peaceful. You'd like it to stay that way. When you're talking to farmers, do you get a sense that they are frustrated and increasingly frustrated about not being listened to, the government not changing their mind on this? Do you think we could see, or is there a risk of us seeing, dirty protests like we've seen in France, or even strike action over this?
Yeah, I mean, the channel may be only 21 miles wide, but the cultural differences are extraordinary. When French farmers protest, they block roads, they dump manure, they set fire to things. I'm just urging these farmers, even though many of them here this morning are very, very upset and very, very angry, I'm just urging them, be voluble but be peaceful. And provided they're peaceful but persistent, I think they'll get the British public on side, and I think Labour MPs representing those rural seats will start to panic. I mean, let's face it, the government's in enough trouble already, let alone thinking that this issue could cost them dozens of seats. So keep going, guys, keep going the way you are, and you may well win.
And to stop the government losing dozens of seats, they changed the policy. Changing the policy surely then must lead to changing the leader. And, you look at the poll at the weekend where you guys come out so healthy, so well in this, in the second position on this. How precarious are things for Keir Starmer these days?
I think things are more precarious for Rachel Reeves. than they are for Keir Starmer. She was the Chancellor that put this budget together, a budget that has absolutely dented confidence in the UK economy as a whole, victimised this particular group of people with sums that clearly don't add up. And after it, we learn that actually she's not a senior economist from the Bank of England. She's hammed up her CV. No, I think it's Rachel Reeves's position that is much more vulnerable than the Prime Minister's right now.
Nigel, can I ask you about this rumour that you are eyeing up a Reform and Tory party, mega party alliance with Boris Johnson? Is there any truth in that?
Absolutely none whatsoever, no, none. There might be people around the edges speculating, saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Do you know something? To do a deal with anybody, you have to shake their hands, look them in the eyes and believe they're honourable. I do not believe this Conservative Party is honourable. I think the breach of trust that we saw after the 80-seat majority in 2019, and by the way, a majority that I helped them obtain, they're not an organisation I would trust. And actually, you know, Eamon mentioned the polls a few minutes ago. We are now ahead of the Conservative Party in every one of the last 10 polls. That gap will continue to grow. We are now the opposition to the Labour government, and I think the Tories' days, frankly, are numbered.
Can I ask you about this WhatsApp group chat that we've been hearing so much about, really alarming messages, homophobic, anti-Semitism, reported sexism in this WhatsApp group chat with Labour MPs. So obviously Andrew Gwynn went over the weekend, a second Labour MP has come forward and apologised now. What's your reaction to this story and those messages that have reportedly come out?
When you're in public life, you get people that complain. You get some people that repeatedly complain, and sometimes it makes you angry. But the whole point of being a public figure is you have to resist the temptation to fire back abusively or rudely. Andrew Gwynn and clearly one other have broken that golden rule of public life, and so it's right that he went as a minister. And who knows, maybe the Standards Committee of Parliament will have a look at it and decide whether he ought to be suspended from the Commons or not.
We'll say goodbye. We'll leave you with your friend there beside you. Thank you very much indeed, Nigel.
Derek Chisora, fresh from his big win at the weekend. Derek. Good to see you. He's here.
Oh, good to see you, Derek.
He lives next door. How about that?
Oh, good to see you.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.